So my seminar is mental toughness versus physical well-being in sports. And first of all, I want to say this is meant to be applied to all sports, but I know gymnastics the best, so that's mainly where I'm going to be pulling my examples from. So I encourage you to apply it to whatever sport you know best. And I want to start off with benefits of sports because there's a lot. So first of all, community. Athletes are able to experience a very unique form of community through sports teams. Um, they are able to use sports as an outlet for stress sometimes in other areas of life. And then the lessons taught from sports, like hard work, determination, and even loyalty, can be used, throughout the athlete's life, even after they finish the sport, in areas of life like work, relationships, and school. So while the world of sports has a lot to offer, it also comes with its challenges. I'm sure any athlete in the room can attest to this, but when you're pushing your body to its limit every day at practice and games, pain is just going to be a part of it. It's just a part of sports. And this can be a good thing. Pain can teach an athlete to push through challenges in order to reach their goals, not only in an athletic atmosphere, but also in all areas of life. But there is a line between physical discomfort and dangerous pain in athletes. And Boston Children's Hospital defines unhealthy pain as an acute stabbing feeling that appears suddenly or a lingering achiness that interferes with daily activities. And then healthy pain is basically when you're sore after a workout because your muscles have just done something that it's not acclimated to yet, and that's delayed onset muscle soreness. So you have microscopic tearing in your muscles, and the tissues are building themselves back up, which causes that soreness. And then unhealthy pain is usually due to injury and doesn't go away as quickly. But healthy pain is good because it's the body's way of building strength, and it can even prevent injury in the future. So while these challenges can grow athletes, they can become harmful when an unhealthy level of mental toughness is developed. And what I mean by that is every sport is just as much mental as it is physical. And pressure from cultures, coaches, or athletes can contribute to an unhealthy level of mental toughness to where the athlete ignores their physical or mental well-being at the price of athletic success. And then, so my first point is culture. Culture pressures athletes and coaches into ignoring this pain to reach success. And then, as win-loss records and scholarship offers become more of a priority, the athlete's physical and mental well-being becomes pushed more towards the back burner. And athletes and coaches receive praise for doing this because they reach success and they take one for the team to win national titles or win gold medals. And this becomes dangerous because it then feeds the desire to keep doing this, even if that athlete is mentally or physically falling apart. And then a quote we talked about in class that I liked from Andy Crouch is, "The only way to change culture is to make more of it." And I thought this went really well with my topic because instead of athletes and coaches being praised for pushing through dangerous pain to reach success, athletes who take care of themselves should be praised in order to promote athletic health and create an environment where athletes can physically and mentally thrive. And then an example of this is Simone Biles. In the 2024 Paris Olympics, she pushed through a tear in her calf muscle, and in order to meet the expectations of fans, because she didn't want to be ridiculed like she was in 2020, where she stepped back for herself mentally. And then I was watching the Netflix documentary Simone Biles Rising, and they interviewed Ellie, which is a former teammate of Simone Biles, and she said something to me after the competition that will always stick with me and really broke my heart. I asked her, "How did you do it when you were in so much pain?" And she said, "I couldn't have people tell me I was a quitter again." And when I was watching this, I thought it was really interesting because when I was watching Simone Biles at the Olympics and I watched her hop down the runway on one leg and then go do this incredible vault, I kind of was like, that's kind of relatable, I feel like, to all athletes on some level, because you're willing to push through some pain to reach your personal goals. But then I heard this quote and it kind of proved to me Simone Biles was actually just wanting to reach the approval of her fans at a certain level. And then I really liked this verse, Jonah 2:8. "Those who pay regard to vain idols forsake their hope of steadfast love." Athletes and culture are kind of encouraged to put their athletic success in the place of God, which is pointless because nothing can handle that place other than God. And like we've learned, idols collapse under our expectations. Not only does this idolization destroy the physical well-being of an athlete, but it also robs oneself of a true relationship with God that is far more fulfilling than any athletic title. So my second point is coaches. Coaches are the first line of defense for an athlete, meaning that they spend a ton of time with that athlete and they should be aware of how their athlete is doing mentally and physically. And many athletes look up to their coaches. They see them as role models and they respect them, and therefore they want to reach their approval. And so sometimes this is unhealthy because they might be willing to risk their own physical well-being to reach the approval of that coach. And while a coach may verbalize caring and loving intentions, their actions may say otherwise. The aggressive behavior and body language of a coach that is frustrated with an athlete that is dealing with an injury and therefore underperforming can lead that athlete to feel worthless when faced with an injury. And this is dangerous because it can lead an athlete to be scared to verbalize their pain to their coach. And this is a lot of times seen in young athletes that haven't developed that independence or voice to speak up for themselves. And if they can't speak up for themselves, this can lead to a lot of issues like growth issues in youth, mental health disorders, and chronic injuries. So the bottom line here is the coach either has the ability to pressure an athlete into ignoring pain in their physical and mental health, or a good coach can change the athlete's athletic journey and future well-being for the better. So this is a poem that one of my former teammates wrote, and she said I could read it to you. It's about her experience in gymnastics and how her coaches have affected her mentally and physically. Battered and bruised, but we keep on going, terrified of being called weak by the people controlling. We can feel the pain, but rarely the gain. We get tired through the mud and the mire, but we can't stop. Do you need to go home? It's like a trick question, making it seem like there's a wrong answer. Our mind is playing tricks on us, too tired to keep going, but somehow we do. Till there comes a day where everything stops, where our bodies, I accidentally clicked off, where our bodies fail us because we failed them. We didn't take care of them only because no one took care of us, making us more like robots. No, we can't speak up, not even a little, not unless we want to be belittled. So we don't love the sport we grew up to love. It doesn't feel like magic anymore, only because of the coach's control. And this seems like really dramatic and like she had a terrible experience. And even though we had the same coaches and we were in the same gym and had the same teammates, we both had very different experiences in gymnastics. And I love my gym, I love my coach, I love my teammates. But a year ago, this specific teammate was pushed past her limit to do a skill that she wasn't ready to do, which led to an ACL tear. And even before that, she was struggling with a lot of ankle injuries that she was encouraged to push through. And so right now she's recovering from the ACL injury, but she's also looking at double ankle surgery. And so this is just one example across many sports of athletes who have struggled from the pressure of coaches and that have led to physical and mental challenges. And then the verse that I wanted to talk about for my point on coaches is Genesis 1:27. God created human beings in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. And this tells us that we're all made in the image of God, which is something we've talked a lot about in class. And therefore, we are all intrinsically and immeasurably valuable. So nothing we can do can add to that value or take away from that value. And when a coach is ignoring the well-being of an athlete, they're overlooking that value that the athlete has and cries. And this mindset is very dangerous because when when a coach is teaching that athlete, they're almost like teaching that athlete to believe that about themselves, because then an athlete starts to believe that their worth is in their sport. And when a coach treats an athlete as less than a whole person, that instills a habit in that athlete to treat themselves as less than a whole person, especially at a young age. And then that leads me to my final point, athletes versus themselves. Athletes are also responsible for having unrealistic expectations for themselves. Athletes who are passionate about their sport often lose the ability to think rationally about the injuries they're struggling with. And then a study done by the National Library of Medicine proved that athletes have a much higher pain tolerance than non-athletes, which is expected, but it proves that many injuries in sports are dismissed. And then many athletes almost become proud of the ability to ignore pain, and it almost becomes like a game to see how tough you can get and how far you can go without falling apart. And this is dangerous because in order to keep playing your sport, you have to recognize that pain and treat it properly. And then my final verse is Romans 12:1-2. And so, dear brothers and sisters, I plead with you to give your bodies to God because of all he has done for you. Let them be a living and holy sacrifice, the kind he will find acceptable. This is truly the way to worship. Don't copy the behaviors and customs of the world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect. So, what I'm trying to say here is an athlete is responsible for taking care of the creation that God has given us, which is our bodies. And although God doesn't need us, He wants to use us. And our bodies are a way through which we minister to other people. We serve, love, and communicate through our bodies, which is why it's so important to take care of them. And athletes who are pushing themselves past that pain to a dangerous level aren't properly caring for the body that God has given us. So I have two major solutions that I want to touch on. First is education. Institutions, coaches, and athletes should be educated on how to recognize the difference between physical discomfort from training load and dangerous pain in athletes. And then second, they should be educated on how to maintain that healthy level of mental toughness while also maintaining mental and physical health in athletes. And then third, they should be educated on how to recognize that dangerous pain in order to use like rest and physical therapy so that the athlete can finish their sport with their health still intact. And then second, the presence of medical professionals in institutions should be required. There are many laws and regulations for bigger institutions like schools, but some institutions outside of school, like smaller institutions, don't have those laws and regulations. For example, like our school has an athletic trainer, and a lot of schools do, but like little gyms, like my gymnastics gym, does not have an athletic trainer. And then due to this lack of medical support, athletes and coaches are then left responsible for making decisions that they aren't qualified to make. And the emotions behind the athletes and coaches who are trying to push through the season and complete the goals that they have in mind, they're not going to be able to make those appropriate decisions. So education and the presence of medical professionals should be required for all institutions in order to maintain the physical well-being of an athlete while also making sure that every athlete is treated as a whole person. And then I did want to add a slide on why I chose this topic. So I've been doing gymnastics since I was 4, and I started competing in 4th grade. But I'm the first girl to actually finish high school without quitting from my gym in almost 10 years. And this fact was the reason why I wanted to do this topic. Because one of the main reasons it's so hard for girls to finish gymnastics is because of the physical toll on the body. I've had a lot of injuries. I'll be finishing gymnastics soon with a lot of chronic pain that'll probably last a long time. And I have many teammates who are also struggling to finish because their bodies are burning out. But I officially decided to do this topic when I overheard a conversation between a coach and an athlete at my gym. And the coach said, "I'm proud of you for not telling me your ankle hurt." And it may seem like a simple statement, but it's coaches like these who encourage young athletes to ignore their pain that make sports so hard to finish. And I'm not trying to like bash my gym at all. That's just kind of like the mindset behind gymnastics and a lot of other sports that even coaches are taught. And that's why education is so important. I love gymnastics and all it has taught me, especially the people it has brought into my life. And that's why I want to see more gymnasts and other athletes in other sports be able to make it to their senior year of high school without quitting due to burnout. Thank you.
I'm gonna go first. I love the topic. You know, sports is always fun to talk about. Your experience is really interesting. Gymnastics seems to be like its whole world, like a whole different kind of world. Like I know there's a football world, there's basketball, there's volleyball, there's all that stuff. Gymnastics is like a whole other thing, right? And so it's fascinating to hear about that stuff. I was gonna ask you why you chose the topic.
Yeah.
You answered that, right? So here's my next question, and there's a follow up. So be ready for that. What's the plan moving forward? Like where?
So for me, like in gymnastics, so I'm gonna be done. Like I have my last meet in like a week and a half, and then I'm just done because I'm not like a level 10. Like even though I've been doing it for a long time, I more just do it because I love it and I love my teammates. And I love being it because I'm the oldest. I love being able to have an impact on the younger gymnasts, and so that's pretty much why I'm still doing it because I love the sport, but I do love the people. So I'm gonna be done after high school.
So as far as like college and stuff, like what's the dream job? Like what's the anything related to this?
Yeah, so I want to be a physical therapist. So I'm doing kinesiology.
Because the reason, okay, so like y'all just gonna have to hang out. We're talking here. Like there's this thing that happens whenever you go to school for stuff where there's something called a gap in the research. Meaning, whenever anybody goes to a terminal degree for research to study to figure out whether it's the science or the sociological reality or the medical reality of whatever the situation is, one of the reasons why people do that is not just because they're nerds, they don't know what to do. It's because they have found something where people are talking about all this, people are talking about all this, but they're not connecting the dots in a really important way.
Mhm.
And as someone who coached for a long time and took classes on coaching and went to the workshops and all that stuff, it just feels like nobody's talking about how to make sure the kids that you're coaching are not hurting themselves. Because what I'm hearing, like the really the story that you told at the very end there,
Mhm.
it's like, man, so basically you've trained this kid to hurt themselves on purpose. I know you want to be fair and everything,
Yeah.
but it's like, what are we saying here?
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
that's a gap in our understanding. Like it feels like there's a ton of literature on kinesiology and sports medicine, all physical therapy, all that stuff.
Mhm.
God knows there's a lot to be said about good coaching and what makes motivation, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it just seems like there needs to be
Mhm.
no question here. I would just really encourage you. Like I think you put your finger on something I've heard other people talk about before,
Mhm.
but it's very clear to me. Like I would want to know. I would want to read a book. I would want to take the workshop to see, okay, how do I coach my athletes in a way that I'm gonna push them.
Yeah.
You want, like you said at the beginning,
Mhm.
there's just so much to sports that make you a harder working person in
Mhm.
general, like even past playing the sport, right? Yeah, you're gonna have pain from your sport later in life, but you're also gonna be a more disciplined person. You're also
Mhm.
gonna be a harder working person. So how can I coach a person like you and make sure to get all the benefits without any?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Like I'm just trying to encourage you, like that. I think you're onto something here,
Mhm.
and whatever for whatever that's worth. Um, I did have one specific question. Um, what would you say? This is more theoretical. It seems like so much in sports that, and maybe there's something to this about business and other aspects of culture.
Mhm.
Sports just seems to be there are a lot of instances where the most successful are typically not flourishing.
Mhm.
Like all the stuff we said in class about flourishing,
Yeah.
right? You got the Michael Jordan documentary, and then he just looks sad, and his family, he's alienated his family.
Yeah.
You got Tom Brady, and he's a mess, and you got like all these huge success stories, and you wonder if they're even happy with it,
Mhm.
right? Same happens in business, but definitely in sports, right? Is there a necessary trade-off if I'm coaching my kids or whatever hypothetical, is there a necessary trade off that how successful you're going to be is just how miserable you're going to be? Does the
Yeah.
question make sense?
Yeah, because I feel like my point on culture wasn't necessarily for like athletes in high school. It was more like athletes who are on like a national and global stage. Because like Simone Biles, like she really struggled mentally because you have like millions of fans behind you, and when you mess up, they like come at you because there's social media now. And so, does that kind of answer your question?
I think so. Cause well, yeah, it furthers the conversation because it's
Yeah.
like, okay, um, there's something about being on a team where most of the guys are trying to get scholarships versus being on a team and most of the guys know full well they're not getting scholarships.
Yes.
And frankly, I think because I never was worried about getting a scholarship, I think I'd rather play with the guys who are just there because of the game.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Because I'm on a team with girls, like basically it sounds bad to say, but like there's like number levels and there's like color levels. And me and my team, we're like it's still like a very competitive part of gymnastics, but like it's not like the track to go to college. And I've always been on that other track, but I feel like that was like the best decision that could have been made for me when I was younger to go on that track because I've never been looking at a scholarship. I've always just been focused on like the people and
Yeah.
like just having fun. So I definitely think that has really helped for me have a good experience.
That goes back to your culture thing, where it seems like what we need is a more healthy shift in mindset. That
Mm-hmm.
hey, these kids are playing a game,
Yeah.
and if it produces something bigger beyond that, great. But again, I want to read the book. I want to go to the workshop where it's like, hey, coach your kids. Like my whole person stuff in here, I mean for it to be multiply applicable
Mm-hmm.
to all sorts of fields. And I can just imagine that at some point, it's going to make for a good coach that looks at these athletes and realizes they are persons. They're not just
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
the next Simone Biles.
Yeah. Yeah.
And truthfully, the harder you push them to be the next Simone Biles, makes it that much less likely that they will be.
Yeah.
They're going to get hurt for crying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Classmates, y'all got anything? Any comments or questions? Sorry for monopolizing the conversation.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it added this like weird animation.
I guess my question would be
Mm-hmm.
what is a healthy and like a better way?
Yeah, I feel like that's why education is so important because like for me, like when you're young, you can't tell the difference. Like you're just too young to like understand that. But when you get older, like as I've gotten older in gymnastics, I've been able to tell like, oh, I'm just sore from this hard like practice I had or like this isn't going away. I need to like go get this checked out or I need help. So I feel like it's just like a maturity thing too as an athlete. Like as you grow more mature, you can like tell the difference and like listen to your own body, but it's also important to educate athletes and coaches on how to tell that difference. Does that answer your question?
I've heard secondhand that like a lot of physical therapy is diagnostic.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're just sitting there asking questions and you're
Yeah.
poking around and you're pulling and it's like, oh, there it is. There's the pain.
Yeah.
And that's part of it. Like, where was that training? Where was that to be able to tell the value of a coach that has seasoned experience to ask questions that get the right.
Yes.
So, like you said, you're not necessarily on professional, but you
Mm-hmm.
still love the sport. Abandonment or actually,
Yeah.
you know,
Um, I feel like not really because like I've we have a team, like a group specifically in our gym who's on that track. And so like and we have a coach specifically to coach that group. And I've been with that same coach since I was in 4th grade. So like she kind of like that's why it's so healthy like in my gym. But the teammate that I was talking about who wrote that poem, she wasn't on that track at first. She was on like the track to like possibly go to college, but then she was moved to our group. And so like I think that definitely had an impact on her mentally because she also struggled a lot mentally. So it's okay. Yeah, I definitely think that makes a difference because my coach was like she literally okay, so she literally like competed with me at my last meet. So she like grew up as a gymnast and she's still doing it sometimes like off and on, and she could have gone to college. And so I think it was a learning curve for her because I remember at the beginning like it was hard for her to understand how some of us couldn't do the skills that she could so young. But as we got older and she learned how our bodies work and how we work mentally, like it's just kind of like it takes time to learn. And then there's other coaches, in my gym, like most of the coaches in my gym have done gymnastics. And I think it's a good thing because they do understand where we're at, but at the same time, they were probably taught by coaches who also treated them like and taught them to like push past injuries, and so it's just kind of like a domino effect.
Anything else?